But I always say, like, try to avoid a meal for the first meeting. See if you can get on their turf. Hey, John, are you, I'm Meg. I work with Camilla's house in their philanthropy department. I'd love to introduce myself to you in person. Are you available for a cup of coffee on Thursday or Friday between 12 and 2? I'm more than happy to come to your office, your house, or even meet you at a coffee shop that is most convenient for you. I know you're very busy. I'm so grateful for your consideration. That was like 4 sentences. That's how every one of my emails pretty much looks unless somebody introduced me. Can I come to you? How easy can I make it? I'm going to offer 2 specific times. Even if I don't have a single meeting on my calendar for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to do that. Because I know, as a consumer, that if my child's school emails me and says, Mrs. George, we would love to talk about your son. Let us know what your calendar looks like in the next couple weeks. Let us know where. Like, thank you. I'm basically like, I don't know. I don't want to decide all this. But if they say, Mrs. George, are you available on Friday or Monday at noon? We can come to your house, or we can, meet you at Starbucks in Rosemary Square. We know you're so busy. We're so grateful. I'm like, these people get it.
I mostly speak on major gift best practices, but I would say it's kind of tricky. Like, you guys know this in our industry. What we know people really need to hear is just not the language that resonates with them. And so what I know people really need to know the most of is really what I talked about on the We Are For Good podcast episode, which is that when you're in a campaign or you're a major gift officer, your ability to qualify a prospective donor is everything to your success. That first meeting, your first interaction, the information that you gather at the onset will inform your ability to be successful in raising any amount of money thereafter. But people they don't know that. So when they're in fundraising, what they want the podcast episode to be called is how to make an ask, right? Or the best way to solicit somebody for a major gift. So I think that what I speak the most about is always along the lines of best practices in asking, but there's kind of those like subtopics around qualifying people so that you're really setting the scene at the beginning of any major or principal gift donor relationship on how it should go, and how to understand philanthropic investors. That's probably the what I've done the most of actually in the last 2 years, is just hour-long presentations on the way that major and principal gift donors think, what they care about, and how we prepare ourselves to approach them knowing the way that they think. But lastly, if there's an appetite for it, I do speak on campaigns. I think that most organizations or kind of groups like AFPs or something like that have said to me that their constituents won't come if something has campaign in the title because they're worried that their board's going to think it's really expensive, or it's scary, or their leadership feels like they need to go through, a 3-year strategic planning process first. So I kind of sneak campaign slides into every presentation that I give, because I think every organization should either be in one or should be preparing for one, but they don't know they're going to find that out when I speak. So that's the answer to that. And then part 2 around our services. Chad, were you asking what an ideal kind of service scope looks like for us, or specifically relative to our services? Campaigns that are I would say mid to large size campaigns. We've worked on 2 campaigns now that have over $1 billion goal, and those have been broken out in stages. One of those has required a lot of frontline fundraisers, and the other one has just required a really long road to accomplish. And those are both universities. Most of our work, like I said, is probably really in the education space. So private day schools. My personal favorite client is a private day independent school. So not associated with, any religion or group. But campaigns that are $50 million or greater, I think are, we're usually well positioned to support. And I think even more important than the size of the goal or the organization, although it does need to be big enough in order for us to be effective, is whether or not the leadership is enthusiastic about having a vision. And I think that that's where we've gotten like the choosiest as a firm over the last couple of years, is around the ability to articulate what the vision is and like genuinely believe that the organization is going to carry it out. And people complain often that they can't raise big dollars because they have horrible data or they don't have enough fundraisers. But at the end of the day, if you have a leader who can articulate a wonderful vision and is enthusiastic and proud and trustworthy about it, you're so much of the way there that I don't buy into the nonsense about the data, because we can always improve those things. So I think any organization that can stand to raise in that $50 million or greater and has solid people at the top, it doesn't really matter the sector for us. But I'm the most jazzed if a campaign has someone I can see will not only be a lead donor, but be really enthusiastic to motivate other people to give at their highest potential. And the most boring campaigns, and we have them right now, are like day school campaigns where their kids go to school. They feel really obligated to do something. They want to capitalize on the fact that there's wealth there, but they don't want to do too much. They don't want it to be scary. They don't want it to be a lot of work. It's just feels really safe to build the endowment a little bit more than it is. Like, I want to see something happen. I want them to be like, we're building a new literacy center, and we are also raising money at the same time for programs, and everything that goes into our endowment will just fund need-based scholarships for kids. And then you're like, there's a space and there's a plan for things to be housed in it. And there's like a real element of doing good for people who have needs. So I think that when you're actually doing something substantial that can point to the impact it doesn't just have on a place, or it doesn't just have on people, but hits on like multiple elements, that's the best. And those ones usually have one or two donors who are just make it such an amazing experience. Yeah. So like Chad, when you and I spoke before, one of the things we talked about was like what works in a case for support and what doesn't. And I love writing. I write for fun and for work, like almost every single day. And I really hate writing cases for support. It feels so like convoluted, and it just gets too complicated. All the things people want to do and say, they try and get on paper, and it gets too crazy. To me, there's like a simple way of thinking about this. A case for support should say who we are, what we do, and how much it costs. Here's what we want to do. Here's how much that would cost. And here's why, with like an arrow pointing straight to the impact. To me, there's like 3 points on who we are right now that are kind of brief, and you don't have a question about us. You might have really specific questions about our finances or something, but we're not going to proactively communicate all of that. We are going to proactively communicate like what we're going to do and how much that's going to cost us, but why that's important. And the bottom line in bold is like the outcomes it's going to drive and like why those outcomes are important. So to me, it's like campaigns really should touch on some element of space, people, and sustainability. I really do believe that. If you don't have a space need, you're lucky, but it shouldn't just touch on people without sustainability, and it shouldn't just touch on endowment without touching on people. So I think that that comprehensive campaigns are the norm and appropriate and ideal. And I think a vision should be as such. People will tell us that they have a vision to do more of the same and make sure they can keep doing it. And we have to tell them, like, that's not a vision. There needs to be something that's a little bit bold and a little bit aspirational in your vision, but it needs to be rooted in reality. Like, I want stats and facts and figures on how much things are going to cost. And I want data on why those are the outcomes you want to drive. So in other words, I feel like I probably did say this on the podcast episode. I want to hear about your nonprofit just like it's a corporation, like as if you were asking me to invest in my friend's technology business. That's how I want you to speak to me about your vision. First of all, I love it. All of us who don't like writing them are thanking you. Second of all, what we've started to do, our firm, just in like the last 3 or 4 months, and this is where I'll give a shout out to my husband, and we've started just putting them into like a deck that has 5 slides on it, because it felt like people were not actually taking the time. It's like we all are reading everything that fits on our iPhone screen. I don't even read Instagram captions that are more than a paragraph. Our brains are so short-circuited with our attention spans at this point that the organizations are so proud of sending out this beautiful multi-page document with all these paragraphs. And it's like, actually, if this was just in bullet point form, people would read it. Or if this was just on a PowerPoint with some different colors, people would read it. So my advice, if you can capture those 6 elements that, in my opinion, are really important and kind of a simple way to set a framework, it needs to be really easy for somebody to get through and visually appealing. So as someone who runs feasibility study interviews every single week of my life for different organizations, I rely heavily on cases for support to preemptively communicate information to this interviewee, this prospective donor, in a wonderful fashion ahead of time. The worst for me and my husband when we're interviewing someone for a feasibility study is when they ask us a whole bunch of questions that were in the case for support because they did not read the case for support. The best is when they clicked through some slides on a deck and gathered enough information and saw enough images, renderings, stats, charts to be able to understand exactly what we're testing and immediately offer their reaction or their feedback to it. So concise, visually appealing, no real questions asked. Anyone should finish going through a case for support and say, okay, so your school wants to grow its enrollment by 250 more people. The people is not the problem, but the money and the space are. So you're trying to raise $10 million for scholarships and $25 million for a new business building so you can house all these business students. We're like, yes, what do you think? That's the best case scenario, is that anyone can read this case for support and have a sense of what the organization is trying to do. The best part of doing this work is having the chance to actually see what an organization or a family can do through philanthropy, and knowing that I was a part of that as either a facilitator or an innovator or a thought leader, and always as someone who sort of partners and advises and coaches either of those entities. But when I see the project built and the people being helped who were intended to be helped, the outcome has been achieved, and that feels really good. I think training the next generations of philanthropists on how to streamline their giving and not feel intimidated by the word philanthropy is the most fulfilling service probably that we have. I love working with families, and especially when there are different generations, and I can work with even kids on how to be charitable from their family's, foundation that they have. I really love that. On the nonprofit side, I feel most drawn to coaching and training people who are becoming major gift officers or frontline fundraisers. I love to meet with them one-on-one and really give them all of the tips and the tricks and the tools that they need to be successful. When I'm not doing a service, I would say my favorite thing of all is writing about philanthropy or speaking at an event where I can share as much knowledge as I can to the masses. So that is what I love. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the newest section of our website, Virtual Major Gifts. For years, Phil and I have traveled the country to implement major gift programs and run large campaigns. And we know that regardless of the organization size, whether it be a small community nonprofit or a larger institutional player, that real major gift work is critical. Building long-standing relationships is second to none. Major gift work needs to continue. It's more important now than it ever has been, and organizations need to adapt to taking that work virtual. We're here for you. We're going to be offering all different kinds of packages for organizations to adopt a virtual major gift style and program, and we'll be here to help you implement it. Different sizes will be appropriate for different size organizations, but with every package, you'll have the chance to interface with us, to have a call, a video conference, and talk through your specific questions. We want you to know that organizing your prospects, getting meetings, making asks virtually, yes, we will help you do that. Those things are all important and they all can be done. We will address all of those topics and more, and we'll give you some tangible takeaways so you have something to work off of and work through. And at the end of it, we'll be here for you to answer your specific questions along the way. So let's do this. Let's take this work virtual, and keep in mind that putting your relationships at the forefront of your work continues to be the most important thing that you can do in philanthropy. We're looking forward to this.